Let me ask you, though, about Votto for a minute, because we were talking about this yesterday. And, look, you don't talk to him. I don't talk to him. Nobody around here talks to him. I don't know who does talk to him. There are people that do, obviously. He has a great relationship with most of the media in town. But he's not talking much at all about what teams are the teams that are interested in him. He says there's 4, not 3. Do you think this is going to be a situation where Votto has to decide, look, he feels like he has some good baseball left in him, and I'm not going to sit here and be the judge as to whether he does or doesn't. I hope he does have some good baseball left in him. I think it's good for the game if he's good and back playing well again. But do you think This is a situation that he's going to have to decide whether he wants to go to maybe a very serious contending playoff team and not play as much? Or could you see him signing a 1-year deal with somebody like the Pirates to get his career back on track?
I would be shocked if he signed with a team like Pittsburgh. I'm not in any way putting Pittsburgh down, but I think his druthers are to play with a team that has a chance of getting to the postseason, and then you take what you can get after that. And I don't believe that he would go to Pittsburgh to try and resurrect his career because, damn, he's 40 years old.
Yeah.
Whatever he thinks about resurrection, that boat sailed a long time ago in the eyes of major league officials who have the power to say, yes, we're interested, or no, we're not. This has got to be unequivocally, I would think, the last year that Joey plays, if in fact he does. But if I were him, I would certainly be much more interested in a team that's going to allow me to be a part of something maybe special down the road. Although the rumors were that the reason why the Reds and Joey were not able to come together on some kind of contract that would keep him in a Reds uniform was because he wanted to play a lot. And the Reds simply did not have that option open to him because of all the young talent they have. But I still would think he'd want to go to a club. I mean, obviously, still in all, at the end of the day, we talked about it for weeks now, where he might end up. My feeling is, as always, it's going to be Toronto at the end, if in fact they do have interest, and I have to believe they do.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it the other day about how basically the guy who did what he conceivably would be asked to do in Toronto, Brandon Belt, is no longer there. So we'll
That's
see
correct.
How it plays out for Votto, and everybody's rooting for him to play for somebody that maybe comes back to Great American Ballpark next summer, because they never had a chance to give him a formal, if you will, goodbye. And I think that would be something that would be really cool for this upcoming summer, and the Reds people will be all over that. All right, let's shift gears to the current Reds. Let's start with Brent Suter. You and I have known this young man for a long, long time. Comes out of Moeller High School. Saw him come up with Milwaukee. Whatever you ask him to do, he does it really, really well when he's healthy, Dad. And he stayed healthy the last 3 years, primarily, almost exclusively, as a relief pitcher.
I am thrilled to death about this addition on this club. As you and I both know, there is no classier guy playing Major League Baseball today than Brent Suter. And I used an example about the work he's done with the Joe Nuxhall Foundation out in Hamilton. He's a classy young man, and I think he's a guy who can help this ball club. So I applaud Nick Kroll for signing him, and we operate obviously under the assumption that he still has gasoline in his tank, and I got to believe if he's healthy, he does. So I think this is a major pickup that's going to just enhance the upward quality, if you will, of that bullpen in 2024.
You know, I talk all the time about how I think oftentimes in baseball, Dad, when teams get a reliever, and I always use the David Weathers example here in this town. You've been around a heck of a lot longer than me, but I mean, guys that pitch in 50, 60, 70, 80 games even sometimes, and come out of that bullpen seemingly night after night, and their ERA is in the low threes or the mid threes. And in Suter's case last year, you know, you look at this guy pitching in Colorado of all places. Now it's not the Colorado it used to be, but I mean, in 57 games, a 3.3 ERA in almost 70 innings. That's a hell of a year. And his ERA every year he's healthy is in the low to mid threes.
Well, I don't think there's any question about that. You post an ERA like that in Colorado, and I agree with you. It's not like it used to be, but it's still a mile above sea level. And so that ball is going to fly in that ballpark. And for him to work in 57 games, I don't know how many of them were, at Coors Field, but at the same time, the ERA is the ERA. And so I go back to what I said. I think it's a tremendous pickup. He adds a veteran presence in essentially a young bullpen. We talk so much about the rotation being young, but that bullpen is pretty young too. And now you got a guy who's been around the block, has pitched well in the big leagues. As I said, he is as classy a guy that has ever put on a baseball uniform. He will be a major influence on the young guys in that Cincinnati bullpen.
I tell you what, I know that recently there was some publication, I can't remember which one it was, but ranked on paper starting rotations around the major leagues, and the Reds were slotted at 5th. Of course, a lot of that data, and we've talked about it before, a lot of that is based on hope and potential of what so many young guys can do. But since you were last on the program, they went out and signed the former Yankee, Frankie Montas, to a 1-year deal. They're rolling the dice on him. But, hey, this is a kind of move that the Reds have not made in the past, rolling the dice on a guy like this.
Well, they roll the dice on a lot of guys.
Yeah, but not to the tune of
years.
$16 million.
No, and that amount of money tells me that in the minds of their baseball people, there is no question but that his arm and shoulder are sound. I can't imagine that they would spend $16 million of Bob Castellini's money and there be just a scintilla of doubt that that arm is not sound. So I got to operate under that assumption. And what they're obviously hoping for is that he can turn the clock back to what he did in 2021 when he had a sensational year with the Oakland Athletics, and I think finished 5th or 6th in the Cy Young Award voting. That would be a major step in terms of uplifting this young starting rotation. And I really have to believe that they did their due diligence, which clubs always do when they're trying to sign a guy who has had some physical problems in recent years. And I think he's checked all the boxes in terms of allaying any concern that they have that he's not ready to pitch. And I think that's got a chance to be a big pickup for this club.
You know, at the end of the day, and look, the Dodgers went out and spent literally over $1 billion. So, you sort of separate them from everybody else. But outside of that, and really as far as just improving your team, I think you can include the Dodgers. The Reds have had as good an offseason as anybody there is in the major leagues. Now, we'll see how it pans out. But, I mean, for those 2 years ago that were wondering, and those for a number of years that were wondering if the franchise is committed to winning, they certainly are going about it the right way this offseason.
No, I don't think anybody can doubt that. Now, if some of this doesn't work out, I think those guys that are willing to condemn at every small negative that may crop up, they have to remember that you sign guys and then you hope that things work out. And you sign guys with confidence and you feel like they're going to help your club. And for whatever the reason, things occur that are unexpected. And if that's the case, it's not a matter of beating up on the front office, because I think this club has put its money where its mouth is in going out to do what they've done in a bid to make this a major impactful club in 2024. But what I find interesting, Tom, is that some of these gambling outfits in Las Vegas that are setting the odds for teams winning, there are a couple of these outfits out there that have picked this club to finish 4th in the National League Central Division.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to grasp that simply because at one side of their mouth, they talk about major questions and can the young kids on this club reproduce or exceed what they did in their rookie years, but then they turn around, just as you said a moment ago, and they rank the starting rotation 3rd or 4th or 5th or whatever it is in all of Major League Baseball. That's a major contradiction right there. So what in the hell they're thinking of in picking this team to finish 4th, and these odds were set and predictions were set before the Cubs did anything. They've acquired Michael Busch. He's a major question because he's not been a big leaguer. Cardinals have not brought him up. He's had great minor league stats. They signed the Asian kid, the pitcher, just a day or so ago. But all these predictions were set before the Cubs had done a damn thing. So I don't understand what their thinking is. And maybe at the end of the day they'll be right. And if they are, there's going to be more hell raised in this town than you can imagine.
Well, it's interesting you bring up that and how some have picked them to finish, as you mentioned, fourth in the standings. There's been very little wiggle room, even after all of these signings, on where they have the Reds on an over-under. So whether you're talking about, in terms of wins. So I think they're at what, Ellie, 82.5? 82.5. I mean, 82.5 is a 500 team. And I look at the Reds, and I think it has to all come down to it's one thing to be excited and optimistic and all those kinds of things and have hope. But, for me, it all comes down to I think their position players look like they're going to be fine. There'll be some guys that stub their toe here and there. But it all comes down to, at the end of the day, these pitchers. Because, whether it's in effectiveness, whether it's in consistency, they've been young, whether it's injuries, how far can they pitch into the season? Because of the injuries setting back their innings limit as we move forward. I think that's the primary reason we're seeing either them getting picked fourth or fifth, or fourth, not fifth, or their win total, even after all the signings. Very little change in Vegas. You think that's fair?
I think that's very fair. But I also think this, and when you talk about pitching and youth and all the rest of that stuff and what appears to be an improved bullpen, I'm going to be watching very closely, as I think a lot of people will, to see what impact David Bell is going to have on that rotation verbally in making them understand we simply, no questions asked, no excuses, have to have more innings out of you guys in 2024. And I don't think that is open to question. And if they come back with an excuse, that's exactly what the hell it is. Because if you're going to have a good bullpen, it's incumbent upon you as manager and Jerry Johnson, the pitching coach, to keep that bullpen healthy and effective every month of the season. Last year, it looked like when September rolled around, they were done. Stick a fork in them, they were done. And I think that one of the major keys to the success of this club in 2024 is that they simply get more innings out of their rotation.